ISIS brutality, more mass graves in Iraq, what it means for Christians. Donald Trump in Indiana meeting with the company keeping 1,000 jobs in America. Trump and the Vatican. Former Ambassador Jim Nicholson tells us what Catholics can expect once Donald Trump takes office. And dancing for the Pope, the flash mob marking the end of the Year of Mercy, thanking Pope Francis. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, December 1st, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Donald Trump and Mike Pence hit the road, embarking on a triumphant visit to a Midwest plant that no longer plans to ship 1,000 jobs offshore. Furnace and air conditioner manufacturer Carrier Corporation is getting $7 million in tax breaks over 10 years, and the company says the incentives offered by the state were an important consideration.
Workers woke up today and said, my gosh, he's not even president yet, and he's figured out how to save 1,000 jobs.
Celebrating the fulfillment of a campaign promise.
We're not going to let them just take our companies out, fire everybody. These are people with Carrier for many, many years.
Donald Trump and Mike Pence visiting Governor Pence's home state of Indiana. Trump takes partial credit for the Carrier plant's plans not to move to Mexico.
But I called Greg and I said, it's really important. We have to do something because you have a lot of people leaving. And you have to understand we can't allow this to happen anymore with our country.
Carrier tweeted appreciation for Trump's work, and reaction from Carrier employees is largely jubilant.
But I'm going to give you credit because what you said you was going to do, you fulfilled that promise.
An advisor to Vice President Biden tweeted, "The deal is not an example of sustainable economics." The White House alleges Carrier had been forcibly persuaded by Trump.
I know there's been some speculation that Carrier was threatened based on the defense contracting business they have with the U.S. government. Ultimately, I think the executives at Carrier, if they choose to do so, will have to explain the decision that they made.
And at Rexnord, a plant close to Carrier, workers fear their jobs are going to Mexico too, and hope Trump will take steps to keep that from happening.
This isn't my first rodeo. This has happened to me before.
Trump's next stop is Cincinnati to kick off his thank you tour with a rally. And today in Wisconsin, a state Donald Trump won by less than a percentage point, workers began the first ballot recount. It was requested by Green Party candidate Jill Stein, and a deadline of December 13th has been set. The recount is estimated to cost $3.9 million. And Stein paid close to $1 million for the recount in Michigan, scheduled to begin tomorrow. She has also filed a lawsuit to force a third recount in Pennsylvania. And the president-elect considers 4 finalists to be his Secretary of State. The decision is drawing a lot of speculation on Capitol Hill, and that's where our Jason Calvi has been hearing from lawmakers on this pick and on others. Jason?
Lauren, the Senate will need to approve Donald Trump's pick for the Secretary of State as well as other cabinet positions. Lawmakers here are already talking about the people and their policies. And I met up today with one of the 4 finalists for the position of Secretary of State.
Tennessee Senator Bob Corker is back to work today, chairing the Senate Foreign Relations Committee after meeting Donald Trump this week.
You're one of the 4 finalists for Secretary of State. Any insights if you're going to be picked?
Have no insights.
So he hasn't called you yet.
Maybe he hasn't called you yet. Some insights with me, huh?
So how was your meeting with Donald Trump this week?
It was a good meeting, very wide-ranging, and quite an honor to be able to do that.
Corker's Foreign Affairs Committee will need to approve whoever Trump picks for Secretary of State. Then it goes to the whole Senate. Corker is just one of the finalists. Others include Mitt Romney, Rudy Giuliani, and former CIA Director David Petraeus. As Donald Trump ponders his pick, the vice president-elect visited the Capitol to meet Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and then Speaker Paul Ryan.
We're going to be continuing to work through December and all the way to Inauguration Day to make sure that we are ready on day one to move the agenda that President-elect Trump took to the American people.
And one of those campaign promises is school choice, which includes vouchers, things Donald Trump's pick for education secretary supports. Speaker Ryan weighs in, saying it's time to let parents send their kids to the school of their choice.
I do believe that there, in this debate, becomes sort of an arrogant, paternalistic notion that Washington somehow knows better or best on how your children should get educated. I think parents know best, care the most, and so that is why we so deeply believe in not just decentralizing power, but decision-making back to the states and then opening up competition.
Back to the position now of Secretary of State, Lauren. We don't expect any decision anytime soon.
Any guesses where he's leaning? Can we read any tea leaves, Trump tea leaves?
Well, I did talk to one of the members of the Foreign Affairs Committee who will be voting first on the nomination of Secretary of State, his Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. And he did point out that the Trump Secretary of State needs to support the values of Donald Trump. So he said Mayor Rudy Giuliani and a former person that was speculated about, John Bolton, are not qualified because they're unrepentant on their support of the Iraq War. He also commented about David Petraeus, saying that his handling of classified data gets us right into the situation, the same situation as Hillary Clinton faced. So that would leave me on my count, Lauren, with just two people, Mitt Romney and Senator Bob Corker. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will wait and see. And I hope they make these announcements soon, maybe tomorrow. All right, thank you so much, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill.
We'll see.
Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. The wildfires around Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee are now blamed for 7 deaths and 75 injuries. This drone video gives you a unique perspective on the devastating damage. Hundreds of homes and businesses in the area were destroyed. More than 14,000 residents and tourists evacuated Monday night. Jurors are deliberating in the trial of a former South Carolina patrolman charged with the murder of an unarmed black driver. Michael Slager is charged with killing Walter Scott in April of 2015. The officer said he feared for his life. He faces life in prison if convicted. In Charlotte, North Carolina, a police officer is cleared of any charges in the killing of a black man.
No justice! No peace! No justice!
Protesters took to the streets after the decision by a protester not to charge Officer Brentley Vinson in the September 20th death of Keith Scott. The prosecutor said he was given evidence Scott was armed with a handgun and Vinson feared he would be shot. Coalition forces fighting to liberate Iraq's second largest city uncover large numbers of mass graves, many full of religious and ethnic minorities. Wyatt, this is just a terrible story. I hate to hear this.
Yeah, Lauren, both Iraqi security forces south of Mosul as well as Kurdish forces to the east are discovering dozens of mass grave sites. Iraqi police and investigators say every day they're uncovering more evidence of ISIS brutality.
Kurdish forces in Sinjar have discovered what are thought to be 2 mass graves, bringing the total number in that area to 29. Based on clothing and other items, they estimate about 30 victims lie in each grave. This Kurdish soldier says they were our people who were trying to escape ISIS. He says they were captured, held, then buried here. All signs point to them being Yazidis, a Kurdish religious minority which were slaughtered by the thousands at the hands of ISIS 2 years ago. A UN human rights panel calls the atrocities an act of genocide. Most of the mass graves are yet to be uncovered because they're too close to the front line between Kurdish forces and ISIS militants. This sign reads, "Please do not approach the fence so we can preserve the evidence and guarantee the rights of all the victims." Iraqi security forces are also discovering large numbers of mass graves as they get closer to Mosul. This Iraqi police captain says some of his officers were taken to this site south of the city to be tortured and killed. Many bodies had their hands bound. The advocacy group Human Rights Watch says at least 300 people died here. This police officer says, "Do you see this soil? They are all human bodies underneath."
The United Nations says it is aware of several cases this month in which civilians who were killed who were tipped off for Iraqi police. And Lauren, it's likely that they're among those in the gravesite.
I absolutely hate hearing this story. Let's focus a little bit on Christian grave sites. Do those exist?
Well, Iraqi security forces haven't released any specific information about Christian burial sites per se, but we do know that a lot of Christians are found in grave sites across the country. Christian communities have talked with us, with other groups, have reported thousands of missing people since ISIS took over 2 years ago.
All right. Wyatt Goolsby, thank you for this report. Ohio has revoked the license of one of the state's last remaining abortion clinics. The Department of Health says Women's Med Center in Dayton failed to obtain a required transfer agreement with a nearby hospital for emergencies. The clinic has 15 days to appeal the order. And a new law in Texas will require aborted babies to be buried. Right now, clinics can dispose of remains in any way, including at a landfill. On December 19th, abortion clinics must bury the remains. And the executive director of the Texas Alliance for Life says this new law is a win for the pro-life movement.
The state of Texas is not allowed, per the Supreme Court, to ban abortions. But at least the state of Texas and other states should be able to ensure that the remains of those victims of abortions are not treated as if they were mere medical waste. And that's what these rules accomplish.
The power of individual states to impact abortion laws is expected to increase as new Republican governors and legislatures take office. 14 states currently ban abortion after 20 weeks. Iowa, Missouri, and Kentucky are expected to address some of the issues surrounding access to abortion in 2017. Joining us now is Reed Wilson, healthcare reporter for The Hill. Reed, welcome.
Thank you.
What kind of changes when it comes to abortion will we most likely see from states in the next 6 months, say?
Well, a lot of the debates that we're going to see happening in states are not new. They're debates that have been happening in those 14 states you mentioned that have already banned abortions past 20 weeks. What the anti-abortion rights movement is trying to do now is wade into some of those states where Democrats have held control in certain legislative chambers or the governor's office in recent years, and now that Republicans control everything, they'll try to advance the same policies we've seen in other states. You mentioned the three off the top, right. Missouri, Kentucky, Iowa. Those are the three that are going to be really at the front lines of this battle right now.
So how is it going to impact the tactics of pro-life supporters versus abortion rights advocates?
Well, there's a limited amount that any one group on either side can do in any given year. And so the two sides are really trying to figure out right now, where is their ammunition best used? Is it used in those three states where Republicans control both chambers of the state legislature and the governor's mansion, or is it used here in Washington, D.C., where there's going to be a high-profile fight over the next justice in the U.S. Supreme Court?
Right. That was my next question. How much of a fight do you think we're going to see against these justices? I mean, Republicans have so much control in Washington right now.
And they have so much control in state legislatures across the country. Of the 98 partisan state legislative chambers in the country, 67 are run by Republicans. That's a huge number. It's almost unprecedented.
Really?
And therefore, Democrats and the pro-abortion rights movement are going to try to make their stand at any place where they'll have the most impact. I think at the moment that is going to be in Washington on a Supreme Court pick where Democrats have 48 seats in the U.S. Senate. That's more than enough to block any potential Donald Trump nominee, and we'll see how this plays out in the next few months.
Okay, thank you so much. Reed Wilson from The Hill. Coming up, the relationship between the president-elect and the Vatican. The former ambassador to the Holy See, Jim Nicholson, on what Catholics should expect.
La tua grazia vinca le resistenze del peccato.
Pope Francis says God's grace can help us overcome obstacles caused by sin. The Holy Father offered encouragement during the homily at his daily Mass. American Catholics helped elect Donald Trump as president, but what kind of relationship will President Trump have with the Vatican? Joining us now is Jim Nicholson, former U.S. ambassador to the Holy See. Welcome to the program again.
Nice to be back.
Pope Francis and Donald Trump have not met, but they had a public spat earlier this year when he was on the campaign trail, mainly over the issue of refugees, immigration, the wall. How do you see that relationship working now that he is going to be president?
I'm real optimistic. about that because they have a lot of shared values, things that they know that people need around the world. The Pope is very passionate about the poor, and so is Donald Trump. I mean, that was a big part of his campaign, was to try to improve the lie of people, particularly working class people in America. And the Pope shares that worldwide. I think Trump does also. They did have a dust-up.
Yes, they did.
And frankly, I thought that the Pope misspoke. When Donald Trump was talking about building that wall along the Mexican border, and the Pope said he's not a Christian, he should build a bridge and not a wall. I think what he should have said was, that's not being Christian.
Right.
Instead of saying he's not a Christian. And I suspect the Pope
probably thinks that too. Right, right. You know, Donald Trump has not yet announced the ambassador to the Holy See. What kind of impact did you have, and will this ambassador have on relations between the Catholic Church and the administration?
It's an important post. I used to say I practiced moral diplomacy. And, you know, the soft power of diplomatic relations. You're not talking about balance of payments or military basing contracts and status of forces, but you're talking about the dignity and the well-being of human beings.
He won Catholics by a 52 to 45% margin, and that was due in most part to the Catholic Advisory Board. We have a lot of people who come in here who are on his Catholic Advisory Board. What kind of attention will the Trump administration pay to Catholics?
They'll pay a lot of deserved attention to Catholics, not just because they got 52% of the Catholic vote, but because Catholics are a significant portion of the United States population. There are probably about 75 million Catholics in our country. It's about a quarter of the population. We have a tremendous amount of Catholic charities in our country, schools and hospitals and hospices. And so it's an important part of the fabric of our culture, particularly that part that's caring for people that need help.
And I think it's a welcome change for many Catholics. Thank you so much, Jim Nicholson, former U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See.
Thank you.
Up next, the impact a possible Obamacare repeal could have on abortion provider Planned Parenthood. And Pope is Pop. You won't believe where a special flash mob took place, marking the end of the Year of Mercy. Republican plans to repeal portions of Obamacare could cause Planned Parenthood to lose approximately 30% of its revenue, mainly from the collection of Medicaid reimbursements. Joining us now is Paige Winfield Cunningham, a reporter with the Washington Examiner. Welcome to the show.
Great to be on.
The Republican-led Congress is reusing this strategy from 2015, where blocks Planned Parenthood clinics, it blocks it from collecting Medicaid. Is that right? Reimbursements. What do you think that is the chance of that passing again?
Right. Well, it became a new reality with Trump's victory because, of course, Republicans have been promising to do this over the past year and a half or so. Of course, they weren't able to because of President Obama. But now Planned Parenthood could really face a fiscal cliff next year because, as you said, its Medicaid reimbursements could be blocked if Republicans keep that provision in this Obamacare repeal bill that they're planning to pass early next year. And that would be a huge loss for Planned Parenthood because they get a significant portion of their revenue through these Medicaid reimbursements.
Yeah, let's talk about that. It's not going to fully defund Planned Parenthood. What kind of cut, and how will this impact their daily operations, do you think?
Right. Well, this would mean that Planned Parenthood would lose its largest payer. So when they have low-income women come and visit them, a lot of these women are on Medicaid. So they provide services, non-abortion services to these Medicaid patients, and then Medicaid ends up paying for those services. So in this case, if this was blocked, Medicaid would say, we're not going to reimburse you for those services, leaving Planned Parenthood either having to cover the costs on their own or having to try to fundraise or make up those costs in other ways, perhaps by raising fees.
You know, many state legislatures, we know, are restricting abortion, and we've talked about that. Is Planned Parenthood going to take a financial hit on the local level because of this as well?
They could. There have been a lot of states that have tried to do this sort of thing, and they have been blocked by some courts. They've tried to also block Title X funding and have been a little bit more successful in that case. So I think the jury's still out on whether states themselves would be able to do this. It's something that is obviously very contentious, but something that Republicans would absolutely love to do.
What was the timetable we're looking at, do you think, for 2017?
Right. Well, right now, our best information is that Republicans are looking at early in the year. They've promised for years to repeal Obamacare, and so
how many times was it? 40 plus?
Yeah, dozens and dozens
right.
of times. So they're probably going to take a vote early next year, and that's likely to include this Planned Parenthood defunding provision, because as you noted, that was in that previous bill that they had passed in 2015. So we could see this happen really early on, and of course, they're going to do it using these special budgetary rules, which means that they don't have to get Democrats to come on board, and so they really have a lot of power in this instance to advance some pro-life priorities.
Excellent. Paige Winfield Cunningham, thank you so much, a reporter for the Washington Examiner. The Holy Father invites students to approach their studies as a springboard to creating a healthier society. The young people are at the Vatican for a conference on the joy of the gospel, written by Francis. The Holy Father telling the group that studying abroad increases self-confidence and allows one to open up without fear. Pope Francis also urges them to overcome indifference to the poor by relying on the gospel. The pontiff also poses for a picture with members of a delegation from Georgia. They came to thank him for his recent trip to their country. The Holy Father praised the former Soviet Republic for their spirituality and culture. And prisoners in northern Italy stage a flash mob in honor of Pope Francis. Inmates from various countries and religious backgrounds danced a Zumba, or is it Zumba? Zumba? Style routine to a song called Pope is Pop. It's their way of thanking Francis for the attention he's given to prison reform during his pontificate. And that was one of the places that he visited when he came to the United States as well. That does it for us this evening. For the EWTN News Nightly team, we hope you have a wonderful evening. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless.